Joe Biden owes much of his prominence on the national stage to the fact that he was Barack Obama's VP pick back in 2008. He would go on to serve 2 terms as VP, and throughout the 2020 primary season, few have missed the former vice president's recurrent references to his work alongside the ever-popular President Obama. While the exact reasons why Obama chose Biden are not publicly known, some qualities were clear amongst his short list of potential choices. All were white people from the political mainstream. Biden stood out from the pack for several reasons. He was especially experienced, animated in his style, and prone to gaffes. Prior to becoming his running mate, Joe issued rather condescending and racially insensitive praise about Obama, marveling at how he was articulate and clean. According to contemporaneous accounts of Obama's advisors, at least one of Biden's expected advantages wouldn't pan out. Based on sources within Team Obama, a New York Times journalist wrote at the time, "At his age, it appears unlikely that Mr. Biden would be in a position to run for president should Mr. Obama win and serve 2 terms. Shorn of any remaining ambition to run for president on his own, he could find himself in a less complex political relationship with Mr. Obama than most vice presidents have with their presidents." As it would turn out, of course, even after skipping out on 2016, Biden's ambitions were both very real and realistic. Aside from a brief surge by Elizabeth Warren, Biden has remained in first place in the national polls aggregations amongst a crowded field of competitors throughout the primary race. His fates in the early states appear significantly less favorable, and his campaign's finances are less than stellar. But there remains a very real possibility that Joe Biden will become the next Democratic nominee for the President of the United States. Should he secure the nomination, Joe Biden will face the same question that a young Obama did in 2008. Obama's answer breathed new life into the political career of a senior senator from Delaware. Biden's could help define the career of another politician or end his own. So how will the Biden team answer the question? Who should he pick? At Joe Biden's age, the selection of a running mate is potentially more important than ever, and it has been clearly on his mind even before he declared his run in the 2020 election. Prior to his announcement, Biden aides floated a number of far-out options for a potential Biden campaign. Among them were ideas he's clearly passed on, like announcing super early or super late, or announcing a running mate out of the gate. In terms of a running mate, the Biden team said they were considering selecting someone much younger, and maybe someone from outside of politics. Biden has also said he'd prefer a running mate that is a person of color and or a woman, but hasn't narrowed in on anyone based on demographics alone. Whomever I pick, preferably it will be someone who was of color and or a different gender, but I'm not making that commitment until I know that the person I'm dealing with I can completely and thoroughly trust as authentic and on the same page. He would go on to claim that Obama knew that the two shared the same values and political disposition, and that he could rely on him to turn to Obama if he were ever in doubt. That's what I most want in whomever I pick. They've got to be simpatico with what I stand for and with what I want to get done. Kamala Harris, who is a woman and a person of color, who is also significantly younger than Biden, and likewise a pragmatic, moderate Democrat, would seem to fit the bill that the Biden campaign is considering. While she has dropped out of the primary race, she was still one of the more popular choices in a crowded field. As such, she could be expected to bring a large segment of voters to a Biden ticket, and with her prosecutorial chops, she would seem highly capable of attacking any political rivals who stood in their way. Early on, Harris was widely speculated to be a top potential choice for Biden, especially as the media made comparisons between her and Barack Obama. Harris also knew Biden's late son, Beau Biden, and since her exit from the race, Joe has had plenty of kind things to say about her. He's even suggested that he would consider her as a potential running mate. When asked about it the day after she dropped out, Biden told reporters, "Of course I would. Look, Senator Harris has the capacity to be anything she wants to be. I mean it sincerely. I talked to her yesterday. She's solid. She can be president someday herself. She can be vice president. She could go on to be a Supreme Court justice. She could be attorney general. I mean, she has enormous capability." The fact that Biden deflected the question to include a large number of potential jobs does seem to undermine the idea that he'd seriously consider her as his running mate. Truth is, there's a very good reason he might want to go in another direction. One of the most memorable moments from the Democratic debate so far came when Harris aggressively attacked Biden over his past opposition to busing, a program which personally benefited her as a child. Speaking to the press at the time, Biden seemed genuinely surprised and hurt that she went after him along these lines.
I was prepared for them to come after me, but I wasn't prepared for the person coming at me the way she came out. She knew Bo, she knows me.
The attack preempted a huge rise in the polls for Harris and a decline for Biden. The two also continued to spar over the issue for some time. While Biden would ultimately recover from those attacks, Harris too returned to previous levels of support. Her poll numbers would continue to decline throughout the rest of her time in the primary race. Just prior to dropping out, Harris sat at an RCP average of 3.8%, just half a point ahead of a new rising star. It would be foolish for any prospective Democratic nominee to overlook Andrew Yang. Yang has an astoundingly active and committed following online. He has a convincing strategy for how to win back Trump voters in the Rust Belt, and few candidates can boast his level of commitment to thoughtful and often creative policy ideas. There's no doubt that Yang represents part of the Democratic Party's future, but will that future be alongside folks like Joe Biden? Yang is apparently open to the prospect. According to the Washington Post, Yang claimed of all the Democratic presidential hopefuls, only former Vice President Joe Biden had pulled him aside to talk about concerns over automation and the Fourth Industrial Revolution. "I'm definitely open to working with Joe," Yang said in response to a question about whether he'd serve as Biden's vice president. "We've actually talked about it." The choice would seem to fit the bill for Biden as well. Yang is younger, a political outsider, and a visible minority. While Yang's supporters are no doubt younger and more independent than Biden's base, the candidate is potentially becoming more aligned with Biden in terms of policy. While Biden has been forcefully against Medicare for All, and Yang's website has touted support for the policy from the get-go, Yang's clearly softened in the direction of Biden's preferred plan, a public option that builds on the ACA. Despite remaining relatively mum on the Sanders bill in previous debates, in November of 2019, Yang told CNN that his support for Medicare for All is not what some of his more progressive fans might have intuited, and were likely hoping for. He said, "If you look at it, what does it say? Medicare for All, which means that you have a Medicare program that everyone can be enrolled in. It does not say Medicare for All and all private insurance is hereby illegal." The Sanders bill does not in fact make private health insurance illegal. It leaves a thin slice of the healthcare insurance market in private hands. The vast majority of health insurance coverage, however, would be covered by the public system, and private insurers are barred from selling what is already provided for free by the government. When directly asked, "So you're adopting the label but not the bill?" Yang responded, "That's correct." Of course, a system that allows everyone to enroll into Medicare or another government program, but does not eliminate the private market for basic healthcare coverage is, in fact, not Medicare for All. That idea already has another name. It's a public option, and exactly what Biden supports. But just because Yang has come Biden's way on healthcare does not mean the two are cut from the same cloth in politics or policy. While Yang's outsider status might allow him to draw in supporters that Biden wouldn't attract himself, and Biden's insider connections would do much to bolster Yang's access to power, these two very different ways of doing politics could easily clash. MSNBC, for instance, has since the Bush administration been a powerful voice for the Democratic Party in the cable news game. They are no doubt an asset for Biden and his allies. But Yang is presently feuding with MSNBC. He's pointed out that he has been largely ignored by the network, repeatedly left off graphics, misidentified by hosts, and underrepresented in debates. He's called on the network to apologize to him on air. On the policy side, while Yang may be open to Biden's vision for healthcare, there is no indication that Biden will bend on Yang's biggest issue, UBI. Back in 2017, the former vice president came out very strongly against universal basic income in a blog post. He wrote, One idea that has gained prominence, particularly amongst leaders in Silicon Valley, is universal basic income. I believe there is a better way forward. I believe we must build a future that puts work first. While I appreciate concerns from Silicon Valley executives about what their innovations may do to American incomes, I believe they're selling American workers short. In another post about what Biden believes is the way forward, he argues again against UBI, writing, "What the idea of a universal basic income misses is that a job is about more than a paycheck. It is about dignity and one's place in their community. What Americans want is a good job and a steady paycheck, not a government check or a consolation prize for missing out on the American dream." You may argue, well, that was 2017 and early 2018. Maybe Yang's changed his mind. And after all, in a recent appearance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, Biden sounded a bit like Yang, bringing up the issue of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. But once again, his solutions differed. Biden proposed job training, an idea Yang has railed against since the early days of his campaign. Yang and Biden teaming up might seem like an interesting idea, one that could have legitimate prospects of winning a general election. But the reality is, it's extremely unlikely to happen. The Democratic Party establishment, including its friendly media outlets, are currently at war with outsiders like Andrew Yang. Yang has, if nothing else, a policy-focused campaign, and Joe Biden refuses to back his signature policy proposal. Political outsiders and progressives are, in general, unlikely to find themselves on a ticket headlined by the ultimate back-to-normal candidate. Bernie Sanders has been subtly, not so subtly attacked and undermined by the Democratic establishment since his rise to widespread popularity during his 2016 campaign. Warren, too, while less hated by the mainstream of the party, is still somewhat an outsider, enjoying more support from small donors than from bundlers. She has also attacked Joe Biden on the issues quite pointedly in the past. While those dreaming of a united Democratic Party might hope for a mixed ticket, half progressive, half moderate, Biden has explicitly rejected the idea when he explained that his running mate would have to be on the same page. But were Biden to reconsider this position, there is at least one progressive he might consider. One of the most dangerous debaters in the Democratic primary, with a loyal following of anti-establishment supporters, it may surprise some that Tulsi Gabbard has never used her platform to go after Joe Biden. She has in fact defended the former VP on multiple occasions, including on his Iraq record, even complimenting him for eventually coming around on the issue. While Gabbard's website claims support for Medicare for All, she actually seems to be relatively aligned with Yang on the issue. She likes the name Medicare for All, but she's actually more in the public option camp. In the first Democratic debate, she noted how, if you look at other countries in the world who have universal healthcare, every one of them has some form of a role of private insurance. She also includes this line as a quote on her website's page about healthcare. While this would seem to support the Bernie bill, which was largely modeled after the Canadian healthcare system, and in fact does leave some space for a private market, any emphasis on maintaining a private market tends to be an indicator of support for a public option, not a genuine single-payer system. So Tulsi may in fact be angling to be a progressive option for Biden's ticket, but there are reasons to suspect that she's not actually likely to be considered a serious option for the Biden team. Despite the fact that she is young and female, and accesses a different pool of supporters as does Joe Biden, Gabbard has a lot of what Biden would likely see as faults. First, she's beefed with Hillary Clinton and the DNC, and Biden is very unlikely to want to fight with the Democratic establishment. Second, Gabbard's signature issue is in direct opposition to American imperialism, which Biden is unlikely to reject. And third, Gabbard's favorability rating is a serious problem. While Biden's net favorability, according to RCP, is -3 points, Tulsi Gabbard is significantly more disliked with a negative spread of 12.7 points. Recent polling by 538 and Ipsos found her favorability amongst Democratic primary voters to be negative 12.5% before the fifth Democratic debate, and after it, negative 17 points. This made her the least liked of all the candidates on stage, both before and after, and meant she had the biggest drop in favorability from that debate. While Tulsi's supporters may dispute the findings of these polls, for example on grounds that young people aren't being properly reached and accounted for, those polls do uncontroversially reach the older generation. Those are Biden supporters, and if they don't like Gabbard, he'd be making a big mistake in making her his running mate. With Tulsi eliminated, that essentially removes almost every female Democratic candidate from contention. Yes, there is still Marianne Williamson, for example, but she is not particularly popular, has no political experience, is not ideologically aligned with Joe Biden, and I'd be surprised to find out that he's even heard of her. So what about the male people of color? The two biggest of these would be Julian Castro and Cory Booker, two prominent people of color who could significantly round out his ticket. Both are a little more liberal on policy than Biden, but not significantly. Both are essentially Obama allies, but both also come with a similar set of problems. Julian Castro has aggressively clashed with Biden on the debate stage, even claiming, "I'm fulfilling the legacy of Barack Obama, and you're not." The mainstream media also widely reported his statement that Biden had forgotten what he said 2 minutes ago as a swipe against the former VP's age. While Booker has never gone after Biden quite so aggressively, he has called him out on the debate stage multiple times. Second, there's a matter of support. Castro is no longer competing at a level where he is able to make the debate stage anymore. Booker's support in the polls has been gradually dwindling. His RCP high of 6% is now down to 2.2. Neither Booker nor Castro bring much to a potential Biden ticket other than diversity, which Biden has explicitly said was not enough. It's unlikely he's particularly interested in either. Although I should note, with his softer attacks and greater standing in the polls, Booker would very likely be favored over Castro, if the choice was down to the two of them. Deval Patrick, a late entry into the Democratic field, or Wayne Messam, a late departure, would likewise bring diversity to a Biden ticket, but not much else, as both are currently polling at under 1% and are unlikely to ever make it into the Democratic debates. So if you're keeping track, we've now essentially eliminated all of the people of color, most of the women, and all of the progressives from likely contention. Does this mean Biden would not pick any of his primary rivals for a running mate? Well, Biden certainly isn't likely to pick one of the other moderate white male politicians, like Bennett or Bullock or Delaney. All three are reasonable allies for Biden, but bring little of value to his campaign. Biden also would not do well to select Michael Bloomberg or Tom Steyer, both billionaires and top Democratic megadonors. If Biden has a support problem, it's not with the establishment voters of the party, it's with the grassroots, where Steyer and Bloomberg are not particularly popular. Beyond the overlap in moderate supporters, and potential problem of raising the ire of the grassroots, picking a megadonor as a running mate creates another problem. For Biden's generation, the basic political model is that donors give money to campaigns, and politicians use the money to build a team and buy ads. The mega donors running themselves is not just a sign of rot for the progressive grassroots, it's a threat to the establishment politicians as well, who rely on donors to fund their political existence. By supporting a Bloomberg or Steyer, Biden would be helping to undermine the political system that has kept folks like himself employed in politics. If a billionaire can run by himself, why give the money to a Biden or a Clinton or a Klobuchar? Amy Klobuchar is the last major woman amongst the 2020 candidates who we have yet to consider. Unlike the others I have so far mentioned, she might actually be a serious consideration for Biden. She's not particularly young, nor is she a person of color, but she's done everything right thus far. Klobuchar could be seen as a way to lock down the Midwest, as she comes from the region. She's avoided attacking Biden, and she shares his general ideology. She's also seen a bit of a comeback in the polls, having improved her performances in the last couple of debates. She may not be the most exciting choice, but there's few reasons for the Biden camp to reject Amy Klobuchar out of hand. Another major candidate, who we have yet to talk about, is one of the most obvious choices in the field. Mayor Pete Buttigieg of South Bend, Indiana, has likewise supported roughly the same ideology as Joe Biden and refused to attack him on the debate stage. He has also shown incredible promise in the polls. Mayor Pete is in 4th place nationally, 1st in Iowa, and 2nd in New Hampshire. Added to his strong fundraising numbers, Buttigieg now stands a legitimate chance of winning the nomination himself, let alone being a good VP pick for Joe Biden. Sure, Pete is not a person of color or a woman, but he would balance out the ticket for Biden on a couple of fronts. He's gay, he's young, and while Biden has put his foot in his mouth on more than a couple of occasions, Mayor Pete is unmistakably well-spoken, polished, and intellectual. While Pete has fumbled when it comes to earning support from black voters, he has at least attempted to roll out a major policy proposal aimed at improving the lives of people of color, or at least easing their mistrust. This also rounds out against Biden fairly well. While Biden has made little effort to roll out black-focused policy, he enjoys a lot of what we might call default support from, especially older, black voters. Biden was Obama's VP. He didn't get that honor because of his support from the black community, but it no doubt earns him some. According to CNN's Harry Enton, Biden has 49% of black voters supporting him. The next closest candidate is Warren, with just 15. Enton also admits that Biden may have some trouble sustaining the support of black voters, but for now the support is there, so he won't necessarily need his running mate to secure it for him. There is no doubt then that while Buttigieg was not the VP choice Biden probably hoped for when he entered the primary race, he's not a bad choice. Put simply, aside from Warren and Bernie, who are basically non-starters for Team Biden, Buttigieg is the most popular candidate Biden could choose. Without a very good reason to reject him, Mayor Pete should seem to be a top pick by default. Of course, while it is fairly common for a nominee to choose a primary competitor as a running mate, this hasn't always happened. In 2016, Hillary Clinton skipped over her popular primary competitor, Bernie Sanders, as well as the lesser knowns, O'Malley, Lessig, Webb, and Chafee. Even with 16 competitors in the Republican field to choose from, Trump opted for Governor Mike Pence of Indiana, who had endorsed Ted Cruz. While Biden has been frequently asked about VP picks, he has given little indication that any of his primary competitors are serious considerations for him. At a recent event in Iowa, he indirectly referenced 4 possibilities, none of whom are currently running for the nomination. The first of these unnamed names is the former Assistant Attorney General who got fired. That would of course be a reference to Sally Yates, U.S. Attorney and U.S. Deputy Attorney General who served during the Obama administration. Yates served as Acting Attorney General for 10 days following the inauguration of Donald Trump and departure of AG Loretta Lynch. Yates instructed the Justice Department to not make legal arguments defending Trump's Executive Order 13769, which paused the admission of refugees and put a travel ban on select Muslim-majority countries. Trump fired her for insubordination. Yates clearly helps to secure Biden's run as an anti-Trump ticket, a strategy he seemed keen on since his announcement video, which emphasized "We are in a battle for the soul of America." In my view, this is not a good strategy, but I understand why it may have its defenders, and Biden, again, seems keen on it. Yates gained some national prominence for her short tenure and dismissal as acting AG and subsequent testimonies before Congress, but it's difficult to really see her as a rising star in the Democratic Party. Her focus has seemed to be more on law than politics per se, especially since she returned to private practice following her dismissal by Donald Trump. She is by no means a leader of a popular movement, nor is she known for any particular policy preferences, nor does she have the ideal experience for a White House resident, being either a governor or a senator. Which brings us to 2 others that Biden mentioned. The 2 senators from the state of New Hampshire, meaning of course Jeanne Shaheen and Maggie Hassan. Both are safely within the moderate wing of the Democratic Party. The 2 are also the only women in American history to be elected as both senators and governors. Their advantages in terms of policy preferences, demographics, and experience would clearly make them fine selections for Joe Biden. On the other hand, neither inject much youth into Biden's campaign, nor are either well known enough nationally to be expected to broaden his base of support. On balance, either would be a relatively safe choice, but neither would make for a particularly exciting ticket. Then there is the 4th person Biden mentioned, a VP pick he's had his eye on for quite some time. The woman who should have been the governor of Georgia. By this, Biden of course means Stacey Abrams, the Democratic nominee for the 2018 gubernatorial election. She lost the election by just 50,000 votes to Republican Brian Kemp, who oversaw the election in his role as Secretary of State. With that conflict of interest and alleged voter suppression, including the purging of 670,000 voter registrants in 2017, Abrams never conceded the election. Biden choosing Abrams as a running mate might be the closest thing the Democrats could get to a unity ticket. While Abrams was endorsed by moderate Obama after winning the Democratic primary, during the primary she was endorsed by Bernie Sanders and his group, Our Revolution. Her record is not radically progressive, but distinctly liberal, and includes support for expanding Medicaid, ending cash bail, ending capital punishment, and increasing public education spending. She is also, of course, well known for opposing voter ID laws. Aside from her gubernatorial race, Abrams gained national attention in 2019 as the first black woman to deliver a response to the State of the Union address. Abrams would also be an interesting choice as she is not currently a sitting member of the US Congress or a governor. She quite simply has less to lose by joining the ticket than many other candidates who would have to give up an important position to join the race. Abrams was, of course, the first running mate Biden's camp seemed to consider. His campaign floated the idea of him declaring a run for president with her pre-built into his ticket. Despite meeting with Biden before his team made this move, she was apparently not consulted on it. She responded, telling the hosts of The View, "I don't think you run for second place. If I'm going to enter a primary, then I'm going to enter a primary." Behind the scenes, an Abrams advisor was far more aggressive, telling BuzzFeed News, "What makes it particularly exploitative is that Biden couldn't be bothered to endorse Stacey in the gubernatorial primary. Now he wants to save his bum." That's some serious entitlement. But Abrams never personally expressed too much irritation at the former Veep. Even while distancing herself from Biden's ticket, she defended him during the first scandal of his primary campaign. After 4 women came out saying Biden had made them feel deeply uncomfortable with his inappropriate touching, Abrams praised Biden for holding himself accountable and argued, "We cannot have perfection as a litmus test." Now Abrams has sent strong signals that she is not just an ally from the stands, she could easily join Biden in the field. Referencing her previous comments about not running for second place in a primary race, Abrams told an audience at the University of Iowa last month, "When I got the question from reporters, I was myself contemplating my next steps. I'm not in the primary, but you can run as second in the general election, and I am happy to do so with the nominee." So let's review, shall we? Abrams says she would be happy to run as a nominee's running mate, and did so in direct reference to a question regarding Biden. Joe Biden hinted at picking Abrams as his running mate before he even declared his run, and continues to include her as a viable choice today. Biden has says he wants a woman and/or a person of color, potentially someone younger and less established, and most importantly, someone who shares his values. Check, 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 and close enough. All in all, Biden has a number of other reasonable choices from outside the primary contest that he's obviously considering. There are also at least a couple of reasonable choices amongst the primary candidates. And while the details of what's going on in the race for 2020 can surely shift what goes into this decision, one thing has apparently remained true for Biden throughout the entire race so far. He's seriously considering Abrams as a running mate. So now that she's signaling that she's on board, it's hard to imagine anyone else as his most likely choice. I'd like to know your thoughts on who Biden should pick as his running mate, should he secure the Democratic nomination. So go ahead and tell me what you think in the comments down below. But as far as the Biden campaign goes, it appears relatively clear that they've already zeroed in on what they take to be their best answer to the question, who should he pick?